I think we're good.
Perfect.
Let me just go back a little bit since we're not at the first slide. I'm going to the beginning. Just before I start this presentation, I'll tell a little bit about myself, a little bit about what's happening this week. You know, this is Senior Tech Week for the entire Bay Ridge Center. Would you prefer to do it? Tell them about Senior Tech so they're aware of what else might be coming down the pike?
Sure. So Senior Tech in the past, as many of you know, was an in-person event. But due to COVID and everything going remote because of the pandemic, we decided may as well try and make Senior Tech remote as well. So this is a new experience for us. So thank you so much for being here. And it has turned from a one-day in-person event to a 7-day, week-long event. And there's a full calendar on our website. So if you go to the Bay Ridge Center.com's website and /senior tech or /senior tech, then you will be able to see the rest of the calendar. So we have a very packed calendar for every single day, usually going until 7 or 8 p.m. with a lot of different vendor presentations as well. So if you have any questions, you can ask me individually, but that's where you can find all that.
And then for a question and answer, do we hold the questions to the end, or can they interrupt me? They'll be silenced through the whole, or will they be able to unsilence and ask a question?
Yeah, so it's whatever you prefer. If you want people to interrupt you as you go, that's fine. They're able to unmute themselves, or if you would prefer to hold all the questions to the end, it's just really what you would like to do.
I'm going to allow them to interrupt me, and if it gets out of hand, then we'll hold the questions to the end. Sometimes people can't even listen if they don't have their question answers. They get stuck and they can't go to the next thing. So,
right.
And usually a question being asked is a puzzlement that everyone has. But if you get out of hands, guys, we'll shut you down.
Okay? Yeah. And I will say, to help with the feedback in the background, everyone can mute themselves unless you're talking. So if you scroll over your picture, there's a little mute button.
It's a circle with a microphone in
I
it.
believe you can mute them automatically from your Zoom.
Yeah, and I can mute you all as well if things, like you said, get out of hand. But that's all I have to say. So I'll let you take it away.
Yes, the schedule this week, this is Grimaldi and Yeung is one of the main sponsors of this event. So we have, besides the one I'm doing today, there are 4 other sessions that we're sponsoring. There'll be one more on technology and the use of passwords and some of the tech tools that you might use to keep your legal house in an even better order. We're having one session on Medicare rights and also the new use of telemedicine that you might be concerned about. Am I going to be comfortable getting my doctor examination by telemed, and how that all works? And then there's a last one about technology tools used particularly by caregivers who might be taking care of their loved ones long distance, or even you who may have a friend who you can't get to see as you used to, that you might want to think, what are some of the ways I can do, keep connected long distance? So those are the 4 topics we're doing, but there's all kinds of other topics. There, OATS, which is a very special Older Americans Technology Training Center, has some sessions on how to use your smart TV. I wish I had time to take that one. How to get the best use of your smart TV now that we're home so much, and we're learning about all the different channels besides ABC and NBC and CBS that you might want to learn how to use. So that's coming up this week as well. Or is that all week long, OATS' session? But I have so many of my clients who say, yeah, I have a tablet. My grandson gave it to me. He showed me, and now I've forgotten how to use it. You know, you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes,
So,
yes.
There are sessions on that too. So please take advantage of this week. Today, my job, and I'm Judy Grimaldi, I'm an elder law attorney and a social worker, and I've been doing this for lots of years. I'm part of the steering committee on age-friendly. It's an age-friendly committee for Bay Ridge, where we're trying to make sure our community is more age-friendly every day, as probably 25% of the population in the southern Brooklyn area, which includes Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, Dyker Heights, Sheepshead Bay, Brighton Beach, Manhattan Beach, all of that southern tier of Brooklyn, about 25% of the population is over 65. So we've realized that, you know, we have to be more sensitive to the needs of the population as we, and I'm now one of them, we now are changing, and that we have different needs and wishes. So we're trying to make the world a little bit more age friendly. So this is an extension of that senior tech and the work I do with within my law firm and also within the community. So that's who I am. And so we're going to talk about getting our legal house in order. And in order to do so, I tried very hard to have a tool for us all. And I developed a guide. It's the 5 at 55 guide. And so the focus today is about how by age 55, and many of us, as I looked at the pictures, probably are over 55. It's time that we have to make a pledge. It's time to get our legal house in order, the deadline, and to get 5 legal documents signed. So we're going to go over those 5 legal documents and also now talk, oh, I see some friends that I know already. So to get some of those 5 legal documents and how technology might help us do it a little better. So that's what we're up to. Some people might say, why now, Judy? Why is it so important that we do it now? And I think coronavirus has put kind of an extra spotlight on us and helped us that we can learn that we don't have to go to the lawyer's office or go to the accountant's office or we can do things virtually. So that's what we're going to learn about. How can we do things virtually? But why is it finally time to get over our procrastination? I wish I could see you all. Maybe I'm going to put you all on and see if you raised your hand, how many of you have documents like a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a living will? Raise your hands. I know you do, Marilyn. Yeah. As anybody who's my client so has already done it. So those are the kind of focuses that we're going to put. Right now, childcare is over, except a lot of you do a lot of babysitting. Our needs are changing. We're starting to see health concerns. We're starting to see that you know, our circle of friends are shrinking, and we're realizing we have to solidify that circle to make it support us, have a safety net. But what stops us? What makes us just keep thinking about it and thinking about it? Mary's leaning on her chin and
Excuse
saying,
me, I'm getting a lot of feedback, so I don't know if you could put everybody on mute because it's hard to hear her. At least I'm having problems.
Yeah, I'll mute everyone right now, and then Judith, you'll just have to unmute yourself.
very good. I have to unmute myself. Let's see.
I just unmuted you. You're good. You
Oh,
can keep
okay,
going.
thank you. I was trying to find my
Yeah, no, sorry. I figured it out.
Okay, so I'm going to go back one slide. I can't. It's not going back. Previous. Okay, so some of the things that stop us, if some of us are afraid, if we admit that we need this backup, then maybe we have to admit that we're vulnerable and that we face mortality. Some of us say, I'm not doing it, it costs too much. Those lawyers are too expensive. Some of us are just procrastinators by nature. We won't do anything that's difficult. Put it aside, put it aside. I'm too busy. It's too complicated. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what I should be doing first. It's not on my radar screen. I'll just worry about that tomorrow. Mañana. And I think underlying is that we're fear if we do act, then maybe we'll have to give up control to somebody else. Maybe we have to admit that we're vulnerable. Maybe you know, we might have to spend some money. And all of that is stopping to grasp that this is really important. And in fact, you're not alone. Some people have said why they don't plan. About 57% of the people say, I took care of it. I think I have it all done, but they haven't revisited in a long time to know, is it all done well? Some say, I'm going to do it. This is the year I'm going to do it. I plan to do it. Some people don't think it's very important, and some people are just clueless. So I've decided that this is the year we all have to do it. Because 55% of Americans don't have wills. 41, only half of us have living wills. Very few of us have healthcare proxies, and very few of us have our estate planning done. Now that we have this virtual medium that we've all become comfortable with, Zoom and Facebook and all the other different versions, Google Teams and classrooms and WebEx, you can say, I can't get to the lawyer's attorney, but office, but now you can see me on a virtual meeting and we can probably get this done. So no more procrastination. And one of the reasons why, as we age, there's going to be a whole lot of us who might get dementia, and that'll be too late. 1 in 9 New Yorkers will have dementia in the future. So that's going to really strain the system if we don't get a system in place. So I'm going to make it simple. There's 2 basic documents everyone needs. One of them is called the healthcare proxy, and the other is the power of attorney. Why these 2 documents? Because we're made up of our body and probably our net worth. Those are the 2 things that keep us going in the world. So let's take care of appointing someone who will make medical decisions if we do lose our marbles, if we don't have the capacity to make decisions for ourselves. And let's make sure there's someone who's going to do the power of attorney, who will step in our shoes and handle our legal and financial affairs so that we can possibly make sure all our bills are paid, are making the roof over our head stays there, that if we need to shelter our assets so that we could get government benefits, we have a system in place if we aren't able to do it ourselves. So those are the first 2 documents, and we're going to talk seriously about them and what they are and how do we get them done. So I'll start with the power of attorney. It is a document that appoints someone else. Someone steps in our shoes. Barbara's probably saying, I heard this already, Judy, but it's not hurtful to hear it again. So someone's going to step in our shoes and handle our money and finances. Someone's going to manage our real estate, our banking investments, even our life insurance. Someone's going to protect our assets from estate tax or Medicaid. Someone's going to handle all our insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance. Some of the guys in the room say, if I didn't have my car, I wouldn't be able to get around. So those are the things that we worry about. We're going to pay our taxes. They might apply for any government benefits, like if you weren't able to do this and you couldn't stay on the phone line for 3 hours to find out why you didn't get your stimulus check, your healthcare agent could do that for you. So it's a one-stop shopping for all your legal needs. How do you get a power of attorney? Well, it's a standardized New York form. You could walk into Staples, if we could walk into Staples at all, but you could order it from a Staples store. So it's a formal document. You have to, you can't just use any old piece of paper. It has to be the New York form, because New York says if you don't use our form, then the state law doesn't support it, and a bank could refuse your handmade document. So use the right form. It's effective. The day you put the pen to ink, it's on the job. They're on the job. It has to be signed before a notary. And that, for you who are staying in place, notarization could be a problem. Not anymore. The government, our state government has authorized the use of remote notarization. So you can say, Judy, I need a power of attorney, but I'm not coming out. I'm not coming to your office. I can say, no problem. I could send it to you. I could email it to you. You can sign it before me on computer. We could have a Zoom meeting. I could watch you signing, and once you sign, and I see you do it, then you can send it to me and I can notarize it remotely. And so we can eliminate the need for face-to-face. Sad from my perspective, but helpful from your perspective. The one thing I can't substitute is you have to have the capacity to sign. And that's, some people say, my mother can't do it anymore, she can't sign. I don't care what her signature looks like. I care what's up here. So if you understand what the document is and you understand the consequence of what it means to appoint someone power of attorney, then you have the capacity. Even if you signed it, I walked out the door and I came back in, because I washed my hands, and I came back and you said to me, who are you? And I explain again, I'm the attorney and we're signing a power of attorney. Say, oh, yes, I want to do that. Even if it was Groundhog Day and I had to do it over and over and over, but as long as you came to the same conclusion, you still have capacity. So if you're worried about your friend, your mother, your sister, who said, I don't think she could do this anymore, Judy, she might have a window of lucidity where she understands what she's doing. She just doesn't have any memory to retain it. Like how many of us tease, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I know what happened 30 years ago. Well, some of us retain the cognitive ability to reason and understand. We just don't retain the information. So capacity is is a pretty low level of capacity. It's not memory, it's understanding. If you do a power of attorney, it will avoid ever needing to go to court for a guardianship in the future. The one thing you have to be aware of, that it terminates at your death. So you could have signed this document and said, I'm done, I'm complete. Just know that on the day you pass, this power of attorney is over and your heirs would not be able to access your document. And I've had this problem where people became power of attorney on an account, a checking account per se. And then when the parent dies, they go back to the checking account and said, I'm the power of attorney. And the bank sadly tells them, I know that, but the power of attorney ended with you. So it's a lifetime document, not an ongoing document. So it terminates at death. And if you said, I can't decide, I'm Italian American, and many of, in my community, the oldest son in an Italian American family is like a little mini God. So many mothers have said to me, I have to put my oldest son on, but my daughter's the one who does all the work. Yes, you can have a joint power of attorney. They can be a team and they can work together. So if you have someone emotionally, you want them to be on the power of attorney, but they're not really very good at paperwork or follow through, you could pair them with someone who does have that skill and have the best of both worlds, someone who knows your heart and someone who can get the job done. So, so that's the power of attorney. Healthcare proxy is the second document I really want you to do. And that's someone who can be appointed to make medical decisions. I have found that the healthcare proxy was extremely helpful during this COVID crisis for many of our older friends and neighbors who had faced with a hospitalization and the family was not able to be at their side. Often because they were healthcare agents, they were allowed to get medical information, medical decision. And that's difficult. You know, if you have 3 or 4 children and they all are wanting the doctor to tell them what's going on with my mother, what's going on with my mother, and the doctors get impatient. I can't tell it 4 times. If there's a healthcare agent, they're officially the ones who could get information and then pass it on. One thing that and it can cover all healthcare choices and even end-of-life decision-making. So it can be very, very useful in the situations we just had with the COVID situation. It isn't the day you sign. In that power of attorney, I said it starts off active on the day you sign it and it gets notarized. A healthcare proxy is different. It doesn't spring into action until your doctor says that you're unable to make decisions. So I have a healthcare proxy and it's sitting on the shelf. My son might try to call my doctor and say, you know, my mother is, you know, not following all the COVID rules. You know, she's now in that age bracket and I really think she shouldn't be doing this and doing that. The doctor could very lovely and graciously hang up on him because his agency under the healthcare proxy hasn't activated until 1, I activate it, or 2, he determines that I am being, you know, cognitively impaired and making bad decisions, and he determines that it's time for the son to take over. But so it's not an automatic the moment you sign. Power of attorney is automatic the moment you sign and get notarized, and the agent signs before a notary as well to accept the job. Healthcare proxy must spring into action when the doctor determines or some medical provider determines you're unable. The power of attorney needs a notary and 2 witnesses. The healthcare proxy is easier to do, and it only needs 2 witnesses. In fact, a while back, I had knee surgery, and as I stood at the arthroscopic knee surgery outpatient, when I stood at the counter to admit myself, they handed me a healthcare proxy right at the counter. It set me a little off. I thought, oh my goodness, am I at risk of dying? I guess every time you enter a hospital, you're at risk of dying. But so they wanted me to sign it right there, and the witnesses were the 2 women behind the desk. So it's not, it's a very formal document, but it's easier to execute and more seemingly available. You can download it off the internet on the New York State Department of Health website, and I encourage you to do that. It includes a HIPAA release. Everyone familiar with the term HIPAA? HIPAA is the federal privacy law that says that no one can see your medical records without your permission, or no one can know about your medical condition without your permission. So within the healthcare proxy Once you appoint an agent, they have the ability to see your medical records. So it has a HIPAA release integrated into it. Okay, I'm going to stop. And if anyone has a question, there's a banner at the end of the bottom of your screen that you can chat and you can put in your questions. And maybe the representative from Bayard Center, is your name Risa, I think? If there are questions, maybe you can alert me or unmute that person so that they can ask. So I'm looking to see if anybody has any questions. You can raise your hand, Ruth or Marilyn. Vincent has a question. Could you unmute Vincent and let's see what he has to say? Vincent, see if I can unmute you, Vincent. I'm not sure I can because I'm not the host.
No, I was able to unmute. Vincent's question is, what is the difference between a healthcare proxy and a living will?
Oh, thank you for asking that, Vincent. I'm going to do the living will next.
That's my question. That's not Vincent's question.
Okay. Vincent, what's your question? Can you unmute yourself, Vincent? There's a little microphone at the bottom of your screen. And
okay.
Okay, what's your question? So I have the living will question. Vincent, what's yours?
I do have a healthcare proxy. It doesn't have any specifics in it. I'm assuming the judgment of the person I've assigned as my healthcare proxy has absolute freedom to make any decisions, even though nothing specific is stated in the proxy. Is that true?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Vincent. Yes and no. So you can, there is space in the healthcare proxy for you to put your decisions in. You can say, I do not want to be on machines. I do not want artificial nutrition and hydration. I do not want this. I do not. You can fill it with instructions. And many lawyers integrate the living will instructions, the end of life choices right into the healthcare proxy. So they kind of not handcuff, but give very specific limits to the agent's decision making. I don't do that. I like to separate the decision from the appointment. And you might say, why? Vincent, why Judy? Why do you want to do that? I do that because I'm signing today where I'm perfectly healthy and I don't know I'm going to need anything. And so I can afford to say, don't do this and don't do that. But I found as people get closer to the reality of passing, they change their mind. And their realities may be a little bit different. So I believe that let's give the agent authority and then empower them with a living will with instructions. So if, for example, they want to say no, 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 they can by producing the living will. If they say, let's see how it runs, let's see what's going on, let's see if you respond to nutrition from artificial nutrition, I can always remove it later. It gives them flexibility to make the decisions based on the facts at the time instead of our preconceived notion of what we think is good today. Because I keep thinking sometimes, Vincent, when we read the newspaper and 1 week coffee's bad and the next week coffee's good, even during this COVID crisis, masks are bad, masks are good, chloro, whatever that drug was that Trump took is bad, it's good. Seems to be a movement in the medical profession, and we don't know exactly what's going to be when we're faced with it. So I like to give the agent flexibility and then a separate instruction, because once they produce that document to a doctor, it locks you into no nutrition, no this, no that, no that. Whereas they present themselves as the appointed agent, they can listen, they can even talk to you to the degree you're able to speak to them. They can look at your records and then make an evaluative decision based on all of that. And if indeed someone pushes back and says, no, you have to put a feeding tube in, then they can whip out the living will, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then use it as a shield. So I believe it gives more flexibility not to put instructions in, but give instructions in a separate document. Does that help, Vincent?
Well, you said in a separate document. I have, a healthcare proxy and I guess an alternate. They happen to be my two nieces.
Uh-huh.
Now, if I convey to them just verbally, face to face, at some point in time, of what I want and don't want, for example, do not resuscitate, do not intubate. Does that need to be stated?
In writing? Yes. And that's what I'm going to talk about next, which is the living will, which Audrey wanted me to share. So I have it up on the screen, the other document called the living will. And New York does not have a formulaic document. Whereas I told you they have a specific healthcare proxy, they have a specific power of attorney. This one could be loving hands. You can make it up. I have samples, and I'd be happy to give you samples. And there are websites like Compassionate Care and the 5 Wishes. You can Google living wills and you'll come up with a whole bunch of samples that you can use, or I can send you one. But they delineate out idea of what end of life treatment should look like. For example, it might say, as Vincent pointed out, do not resuscitate, do not. So it's a writing. It's a writing that has 2 witnesses. So it's, you see the word will in it, living will. So it's like a will, but about health. Whereas your normal will is about money. This is about health. So it can describe your healthcare choices. It could describe your end of life options. For example, I want to be at home. I do not want intubation. I do not want to be on a ventilator, which was very problematic because many people had that in their living wills, and then they were afraid when COVID came, would they not be given a ventilator? But there's a very, the living will is for a very end sliver of life, which was when there's no hope of recovery. So in the COVID situation, there was hope of recovering if you went on a ventilator. And that is why the living will would not have applied to the use of a ventilator in the COVID situation. But some people still got nervous about it and they wanted special language, so we put it in. So it can be drafted to what you particularly worry about. For me, I particularly worry about pain. I said, I don't want to be in pain. So I want to make sure my living will says, give me palliative care. Make sure I'm comfortable. Even if comfort is at the expense of shortening my life expectancy, because I don't know if you know, but morphine will repress respiration. So if one of your illnesses is respiratory and you say, but I don't want pain, and I take morphine, I may suppress my respiration ability and therefore may die sooner, but more comfortably. That's the yin and the yang of some of these decisions, which are really tough. And those of you who have been through it for a loved one know just how tough it is. So yes, Vincent, you should have a writing, and the writing should outline your specific wishes. And then your 2 nieces should get a copy of this writing, and therefore they would have instructions, but that's personal to them, not published in your medical records. And why am I so paranoid about putting it in the personal records? Because I had an experience. And lawyers, once you learn from a bad experience, you don't want it to happen again, and you share it. And that experience was an insurance company saw a living will in a record and said, look, it says here he doesn't want treatment. Therefore, we're not paying for it. Now, that only happened once. It doesn't happen routinely, but once is enough for me. So I say living will should exist, not in your file, in your pocket, in your niece's pocket, in your loved one's pocket, so that it can be presented when they want to put the shield up and say, basta, as my grandma would say, enough. No more. That would be when you present it. So it should be a tool for the agent to use when they're ready. So you're prepared, but cautious. Does that make sense?
I'm a little bit confused. I guess what I'm driving at, I've certainly, I'm using myself as an example. I've certainly had some conversations with, my nieces, maybe probably not thoroughly enough. And I don't have anything.
You have to put it in writing. Words fly away, writing stays.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
and conversations are good and important, but
Yeah.
give them something, because when they say, my uncle told me, and the doctor says, well, I need something, dear. If she could put a piece of paper in front of that doctor's face or the administrator's face, then they say, okay, this is clear. It's been witnessed. There's no discussion. We'll follow your instructions.
Okay.
Okay. What happens when you don't have planning, when you don't have the power of attorney, when you don't have the proxy? There's going to be some bills that won't get paid. There might be some taxes on your real estate that'll sit out there. There might be some arguments about who's in charge. I have 2 sons. they have very different ways of looking at the world. So I might have two bosses who are going in different directions. I don't think I want that. So I want to have some order in my life. So I have these documents. I've told you're good at this, you're going to do that. You're good at that, you're going to do that. Maybe pots on both their houses. Maybe my sister's going to do everything. I don't know. But that's the decisions you will face. Who's going to be in charge? And without them, what happens when you're unprepared? Guess who steps up? The court. Who wants to be in court when you're a little bit demented or a little bit sick or a little bit not there? Not me. Court's frightening and confusing and a waste of time and expensive enough. Never mind when I'm impaired. So I'm going to avoid court at all costs. So I'm going to get these documents done so that it's not a judge who's deciding or an impersonal public administrator or a court-appointed attorney or someone who thinks they, some off-the-rails social worker. No, I'll bank on my two sons going in different directions, even because I know they love me, rather than a court doing that. So it's an intrusive, expensive waste of time. And while they're deciding what to do, you're sitting there with your needs unmet. So please, please think long and hard. No more procrastinations. This has to get done. And if COVID didn't convince you, I don't know what else will. So those are the basic safety net document, the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, and the living will. And I'd throw in the HIPAA release as one. Now, the next document you might think about is, do I need a will? And what the heck is a will? And if you're curious, that's me with my granddaughter. So if there's anyone that's going to motivate me to get my documents done, it might be her. I have 6 of them, but she was the first. Anyway, so the will is a legal document that decides about your money. Where does everything go? If you don't have a will, don't fret. New York State wrote one for you. You might not like it, but it's there on the books. And it basically follows bloodlines. So if you had, an Isabella in your life that you wanted to do something special for, if you had a spouse or 2 children or whoever, the court will follow bloodlines. And it might not get to Isabella because there's people ahead of her. So, so that's why you might want to do a will. You might want to deviate from the state's bloodline. And those of us who may not be married, so we don't have a spouse that everything naturally might go to, or we might have never got married, never had children, and who are your bloodlines? It could be your cousin of your, the one child of your father's brother who he's died, your father's dead, and this cousin out in Oshkosh is your only really living relative, but there's so many people in your life here in New York that mean so much to you, would not be remembered without a will. So really, you really should consider a will. What stops you from making a will? I should probably come back to the group and say, how many of you have wills already? Raise your hand. Thank you, Vincent. Okay. I don't see a lot of other hands. Oh, Jeffrey's got a will. Okay. So we have a few people with wills. I know my clients have wills because I wouldn't let them out of the room without one. So, okay. I'm trying to get rid of the pictures now. Back to it. Okay. So, what might stop you? One of the things you have to think about is who's going to be your executor. So remember I told you about the power of attorney. When you die and the power of attorney collapses, who steps up? Your executor. So that's the person you have to figure. It could be the same person. Whoever was your power of attorney, it'd be natural for them to be your executor. They've managed during life. They could help after lives. It also sets the record straight. You know how families said, my mother always said, or my aunt said I was going to get the dining room, or whatever, Jeffrey's paintings on his wall, someone's going to decide what, my uncle told me I could have that painting. You want to set, the will sets the record straight, who gets what. It also saves spouses. If you're married, it gives your spouse the ability to have everything run smoothly to them. If you left your spouse out for good reasons, I've had many who wrote wills that didn't give anything to their spouse because their spouse had dementia and they couldn't handle it, so they put it in a trust. I just want you to know that the state protects widows and orphans. widowers too. And they say every spouse, when the ring's on your finger, you have the statutory right to receive 1/3 of your estate. So a spouse has a right to your estate whether you write them in or not. Children don't. You could write your children out of a will. It's sad to think that we might need to do that sometime, but children have no right. And they think they do. But if you write a will and says, I leave my children out, they're out. They can't come back and contest that. A spouse could, but a child cannot. Now, if you didn't write a will, it's going to go to the bloodlines, and children are in the bloodlines. So a will is a way to divert the natural bloodline distribution to the way you want it to be. Now, many of us follow bloodlines anyway, so it's kind of immaterial, but that's what a will does. But a bloodline will does not appoint an executor. So you could have my two sons going different directions, could fight who's going to be the executor. If I write a will, I identify who. All wills, whether the prettiest one with ribbons on the side and a wax seal goes through probate, or a simple will that you hand wrote, all wills must go through probate. All wills must be signed with 2 witnesses. All wills have to have you sign with the witnesses being present while you sign. And so a will is a way to stop family troubles because it shows what you want, and it's unequivocal, signed, and so it looks like there's some chats. Is there chats? 5 chats. Let's see. So there's starting to be some questions. What about a sibling? Audrey, what do you mean by what about a sibling?
Well, you said that children don't automatically inherit, that the spouse automatically inherits. So I'm asking, what about a sibling? Would a sibling automatically inherit? No.
Only if so under bloodlines, they would only inherit if so if you never wrote a will, Audrey, the government's will follows bloodlines. So if you have no spouse, have no children, have no parents who are alive, that's the order. The first person to receive under your estate, under state law, is your spouse, then your children, then your parents. If all of those have predeceased you, then your siblings would step up. Ordinarily, though, your siblings would have no rights if there's people in front of them. Does that make sense, Audrey?
Yeah, so it's spouse,
Children,
children, and then siblings.
your parents.
My parents, yeah. And
Like
then
your parents have passed before you, but doesn't always happen. And
Right.
then siblings.
and then siblings.
And if there's
Okay.
no siblings, then nieces and nephews. So
Okay.
that's the natural bloodline order. If you said, I'm a procrastinator, I'm never getting around to do this will, then the state would have a will for you and would follow that pattern.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So all wills go through probate, and you might say, why? I keep hearing Susie Orman say, avoid probate. Why is probate so bad? Let's see. It's not moving forward. So I said that if you didn't have a will, this is what would happen. When there is no will, the process is a little bit more delayed. It allows for families to come in and argue about, well, mommy wanted this, mommy wanted that. There's no boundary line for that. The costs increase. It's more expensive because you have to decide who's going to be the executor. For me, the most disruptive thing is when an estate is slowed down for probate. There sometimes are dependent and minor children, maybe not in our situations, but who need our support, and the money gets frozen and it doesn't get to them. So without a will, there's opportunity or possibility of family stress, family pain, family disruption. And none of us, especially none of us as parents, as family members, would want that. So we encourage you to think about a will, think about a structure. You might say, well, I really need to know more about what probate is. All probate is because you're not here any longer, you've passed. Your mouth has been permanently shut. No instructions are coming out of you. The court steps into your shoes as the watchdog of your estate. And they'll say, well, we're going to make sure that this will is a real deal will. Could be a fake. Poor Brooke Astor. one of the richest women in our city or state probably, had someone forge her will. Her son was so greedy that he forged a will, like he wasn't going to get enough. And I guess egged on by his wife, who wanted to have the estate rather than it go to some of her his children. So, so the first job of the judge is this a real deal will? Is it forged? And how does he or she, in our county, Kings, they're women who are the surrogates. So how does she determine whether it's a forged will? The witnesses, witnesses may have to be found and examined to figure out whether they did sign it. Can they give testimony? Is this a real deal will? So that's the first thing it does. The second is it gives everyone who would have been a beneficiary of your estate but for this will. So let's say I wrote a will and I said, my husband has Alzheimer's. I'm not going to give anything to him. I'm going to let it pass straight to my 2 children. My husband, if he didn't have Alzheimer's, could come and contest the will and say, wait a minute, I should be getting something. I want at least my statutory share. Or if it was, or like Audrey said, it got down to her siblings wanted to challenge because they weren't in the will. If they were a natural heir under the New York State bloodline plan, they could come forward and contest the will, and they have to get notice of the will. Remember when we used to watch the movies and they would sit in the room and the lawyer would read the will to everybody? Remember that? Well, they don't read wills anymore, but everyone has an opportunity to see the will, and it gets sent to everyone. And they have to have a hiatus time, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, to come forward if they have any objection to the will. If, like Brooke Astor, they thought it was a forgery, or they thought you weren't in your right mind when you signed it, or there's a communication that it's not written well, so you don't understand who's on first, who's on second. So any of those reasons could be a reason to contest a will, and the judge wants to give the families an opportunity forward. So that's what probate is. And so that, you can imagine, would take some time. It might take some time to get through that process, and therefore it slows the process down. That's why probate, for some people, if there's a contest, could take over 1.5 years to get a will through probate. Some people, it takes all of 6 weeks. So the range is possible. So how do you avoid probate? There are certain assets that are non-probate by its nature. So assets that have a designated beneficiary, assets like life insurance, where you name beneficiaries, assets like your retirement accounts often have beneficiaries. Those typically are non-probate assets because you took the time to name beneficiaries. Remember when you used to go to the bank and your grandmother said, I have this account in trust for you, or you made it in trust for one of your grandchildren. It will pass by operation of law to those beneficiaries. No court. Your will could say, I give everything 50-50 to my children. And then all of your beneficiaries on all your accounts have one child. Those will go according to the contract with the bank to that one child, and the 50-50 will won't happen. So you have to be very conscious that your will and what you do in your life may not always jive. So there are many assets that may be non-probate. Only the assets that you fail to name a beneficiary on, or you can't name a beneficiary on, go through probate. A typical example is property. You can't put an in trust for on a deed or on your co-op shares. Those often end up going through probate because they're more expensive. You can't just go in the bank and add a name. Sometimes people, it used to be brokerage accounts. You couldn't name transfer on death on them. So those often went through probate. So if you made a list of all your assets and said, I got a beneficiary on this, a beneficiary on this, a beneficiary on this, I'm clear, Judy. You might be. Your will may be a ceremonial document that really governs nothing because you've gone to the trouble of naming beneficiaries. And any asset with a beneficiary will pass by operation of law, and you will have only that a person who's receiving it walks into whatever financial institution with a death certificate in their hand, and they're going to get that asset automatically. I see there's a chat. So typically joint accounts run by operation of law. You name a joint owner, you die, the remaining joint owner owns it. there's some convenience account where you name a payable on death on. You can do that. Trusts also avoid probate. And that's why Susie Orman is always selling you trusts, because they avoid probate. They have other benefits besides avoiding probate. They provide for the owner of that trust to have instructions on how it should happen after they die. It manages the asset while they're alive. So it continues, it continues after you pass. It doesn't end with your death, which all other accounts end when you end. And either the beneficiary takes over or it goes into your estate through probate. I'm trying to figure out how I open the chat. Let's see if I can. Okay, I'll move to the next. I'm sorry, the person who's chatting to me, I don't know how to see my chats. So maybe if you're unmuted, you could just ask your question or raise your hand or something so I know you're trying to talk to me.
No, my
Jeffrey.
question, I think you answered, which was, you could put the co-op in a trust and avoid probate.
Yes. I'm going to talk about the types of
I just
trusts.
want to ask one question. Back to a power of attorney.
Yes, Maria.
Now you're doing the power of attorney. It goes into effect immediately.
Yeah.
What if, let's say, 2 or 3 years from now, I find that whoever it was has the power of attorney is doing stuff to my property or to whatever it is, and I don't like it? What happens then?
Thanks, Maria. All powers of attorney are revocable. So if you have the danger is you don't have the competence, but if you have the competence, fire them. You revoke the power of attorney, and that's a writing that you write to them stating that, does that mean we're an hour? We're finished?
Yes.
We're finished. Oh my God. I can keep going a little bit if you don't mind, but I don't know. What's our rules with the Bay Ridge Center? Do we have to shut at 12:30?
No, we can keep going. Maybe like 12:30-ish, 12:40.
Okay, I'll be faster. So, so power of attorney can be revoked. It's a writing to both them and any financial institution you told them that had. Okay.
Okay, that's what I wanted to, that was why I
Perfect.
came on, because
Good. Thank you. Okay. So there are a couple of kinds of trusts that you could choose. One is revocable. That's the one most people in the early stages of their planning say, that's all I want. I want to avoid probate. I want to make sure I have a trustee, and just in case I have a random loss of capacity, I know there's someone who's going to step right up. It's like a super duper power of attorney with a will attached to it. So it gives you a will without probate and a very powerful power of attorney for all the assets inside the trust. Note, as Jeffrey said, can I put my co-op in the trust? You can by law, but the co-op may have a different idea. For example, some co-ops refuse to allow ownership by a trust. So it's a case-by-case basis. And that's something, Jeffrey, you'll have to inquire with your co-op management.
No, I have done that already. In fact,
good. Okay. We're not going to, Jeff, because we're on, we'll hold your thought. Just one thing, irrevocable trust has no Medicaid or creditor protection, because if you could touch the money, use the money, access the money, which you can under irrevocable trust, Medicaid says it's still yours. So it's not protected. So just know that. The only trust that comes with Medicaid protection is an irrevocable trust, which means you have to give the reins to the trust to someone else to manage, to act as your trustee. So you have to think about that very carefully. It does protect the assets. It does avoid probate. It does give you all the other benefits of a trust with one extra Medicaid planning. And that's what people use in their later years, like 80 plus, or if they're facing a long-term illness that could end up they're needing either long-term care, home care services, nursing home services. That's when you need the irrevocable trust. There's a special needs trust for disabled persons, and those of you who might be facing a disability, a special needs trust could be very advantageous. I wanted to talk a little bit about retirement accounts, but I'm going to skip this. Just know that retirement accounts by tradition, because you name a beneficiary, avoids probate. I believe this PowerPoint will be available to you, and you can look through this too. Some of the rules on retirement accounts have changed. I just wanted you to know that right now with the onset of coronavirus, it has opened up technology solutions to our social distancing needs. And as I said before, most attorneys will now see you remotely by virtual means like this. We'll use Zoom and all different kinds of video conferencing. Right now, the governor has said we could notarize remotely. We could witness remotely. We don't have to be in each other's presence to do these documents. Right now, it's been extended through July 6th, and the state bar is working on making some of these conveniences permanent. The juries are like this and this on it, but in order for you to do a remote virtual planning of any of these documents I just went over, you need good computer access, and those of you who are using Zoom for this, you have it. You need a good printer so I can send you your documents. And you need to be able to scan or fax from home. And the reason for that is once you've signed the document, you have to send it back to me to notarize. So those are the tools: good computer access, a decent printer, and the ability to scan or fax from home. There is also a new tool on the horizon that you have to be aware of, and that's because we have such a cyber life now, and many of us have online documents, we have access to electronic assets. We need to learn how to control and use our internet footprint. Many of us have all our family, we don't make scrapbooks anymore. We have it all on our computer. So you have to kind of acknowledge that the computer as a tool, both in your financial life and in your personal life, your Facebook account. I have a friend who's deceased since 2000 and I think it was 13, and her Facebook account, I still get notices it's Joan's birthday from her Facebook account because no one had the ability in her password to turn it off. And it's kind of lovely in some ways and sad in another, but you need to have a plan about your computer life. And that's what we wanted to kind of focus on. One of the things we did was we created a digital diary. It sounds very fancy. It's really a two-fold booklet that we would be happy to send you, where you would store all your passwords. And some of us have said, no, I'll put they're all in my computer under a separate folder. But if I can't get into your computer, I can't get to your stuff. I can't see your password. So we've created a little booklet, but just get in the habit as you change your password to update your password. I will tell you, I had a client who I was his everything because he had no family. And he was a computer whiz because he was double amputee and could never go out. Well, he died and he had changed his password and had a chance to update me, and I couldn't get into his, I spent so much computer dollars on trying to get into his computer. And I'll tell you, I saw a lot of personal stuff I don't think he wanted me to see, that in order to get to his documents. So please, if you should really have your passwords available to your agents to be able to get in past your passing. And these are all of your devices. And we may have different, I know my smartphone has a different password than my laptop that I'm using today. My Mac has a different one. My TV may have a different one. I try to be consistent, then they tell me you can't have the same password for everything. So I mix it up a little bit. So I need a lot of different passwords, and so would my agent. And I want them to get at my Facebook account and maybe draw off the pictures. I want them to shut down my Instagram and my Twitter. I'm not on any dating apps, but you might be lucky enough to be on some. You might want to shut those down. Definitely, I want them to get at my health information. Now doctors are having, all of our medical records are online. I want them to be able to get at that. I certainly have shopping online. I don't know how many of us don't have an Amazon account, but it might be interesting to have people know what they are and maybe even shut that down for financial and fraud abuse. And definitely our financial accounts. I have a different password for my credit card, from my bank accounts, for my IRAs, and all of those for your executor. Wouldn't it be lovely if your executor could get everything online, all the information, so they would know what they can collect and what they can, what's even out there. So I want you to start to make a digital diary of these kinds of accounts. And you might say, I'm not on the computer a lot. And then when you look at this list, you realize you have one in each category. I am sure of it. So if you want to know more about senior tech and cybersecurity, my partner, Joanne Seminara, will be doing a session on Wednesday, June 10th. It'll kind of be a supplement or a continuation for you to learn what computer tools are safe for your legal and financial planning, what are useful. They'll be doing an outline of where some of the password protections you can use and what can be stored online and what can't. You're going to learn about the good, the bad, and some of the scams.